as a joke. But the very worrying thing is that the people he's referring to, the really hardcore Second Amendment fanatics, and that's what they are, there are enough of them that might take it as an invitation or as a suggestion. They might just put the idea in the back of their head. So it's a very, very dangerous, irresponsible thing to say, which is basically what he's been specialising in during this entire election campaign.
Carl, does he self-sabotage? I mean, the prevalent opinion now is that bold establishment puncturing Trump mystique has been replaced by a realisation that he's gone bananas, especially if you don't like Donald Trump. Has there been a sea change in what he's been doing?
What I've noticed is that he's showing an increasing inclination to kind of do an about-face. He's done that several times just in the past week or so, where he's kind of backpedaled a bit. And I wonder whether that, in fact, does him any favours with his own constituency, because they kind of support him because he's a guy who just doesn't care who he offends. And the moment he starts kind of going backwards and not quite apologising for people, but shifting his position, I wonder whether his hardcore supporters, as I say, those who admire the kind of whole tough guy stance, start to wonder, well, is he as tough as he's been leading us to believe? I've heard a gaffe defined as something you say that is actually true. It's what you genuinely believe, but shouldn't say. And I wonder whether this is what Trump is doing. So when he makes a comment like that one about the Second Amendment, maybe that is what he really thinks, that they should take the law into their own hands and assassinate Hillary Clinton. Who knows? Who knows what's going on inside that man's head?
Who knows, indeed. Another 296 pages of Hillary Clinton's emails have been released, says the New York Post, exposing key Clinton aides doing favours for billionaire donors. Now, the New York Post doesn't like Hillary much. But then that's the dismal dilemma for many Americans, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is the problem. I actually have an uncle who lives in Florida. He emailed me this morning saying 318 million people live in this country, and the only two we could find to run for president were Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. And I think, again, that is, I agree with Carl. I don't think this is going to happen. I'm sort of doom-saying here, but there is a disillusionment with her as a candidate as well. There are a lot of Bernie Sanders supporters who think that he was robbed of the election. There are a lot of, Democrats, independents who don't really want another Clinton. They've probably seen enough of her over the last few years. She doesn't have a spotless reputation by any means. She's not new. She's not a new voice. And then, of course, there are many, many Republicans who just despise her. So, it's a real problem for the Democrats.
Some light relief. In Australia, PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, want to change the name of Eggs and Bacon Bay on the south coast of Tasmania. It's not named after Lady Jane Franklin, a governor's wife who ate bacon and eggs there in the 19th century. According to some reports, it's because wildflowers grow there in Eggs and Bacon Bay, and they're yellow with red-brown bacon-coloured tinges on the petals. And PETA doesn't care so much about the petals. It wants to send a, quote, powerful message of compassion and promote the healthy food that Tasmania is known for, like apples, apple and cherry bay, or failing that, heart attack bay. One local man told the ABC that locals are perfectly happy with the name. There's plenty of room in the world for these single interest groups to go and annoy other people and leave us in peace. What would your decision be were you on the Tasmanian Geographic Board?
My decision would be to close the door in the face of the PETA people when they came knocking at my door looking for a donation. That would be mine.
That's a harsh reaction. And PETA's now going to write, Carl, to other districts around Australia where there are perhaps other inappropriately named areas.
Look, is there no limit to this sort of lunacy? Really? What is it? Egg and Bacon Bay? Bacon and Egg Bay. What a lovely romantic name, and whichever explanation you accept for it, whether it's to do with the wildflowers that grow there or some historical association, either is entirely valid. Why don't these people just find they don't have enough to do with their time? Obviously, they need more constructive things to do.
Or is it branding? I mean, they know the name won't be changed, but it gets the vegan message out.
Oh, they love getting their name out there, that group. Yeah.
Jeremy Elwood, thank you for coming on the panel today.
My pleasure.
Carl Dufresne, nice to have you back as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jim. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you, everybody, for listening, and we are back tomorrow with the panel. Checkpoint with John Campbell now.
Kia ora everyone, I'm John Campbell, and on behalf of the team, haere mai, welcome to Checkpoint on RNZ National. Tau te maira I hoa mā, he kōrero kei te haere, he kaupapa kei te karawhiua. Tonight, Sonny Bill Williams from his hospital bed on injuries, luck, how he's staying for the team, and his little sister and her silver medal. Nauru and the documents that graphically illustrate the extent of the violence, sexual abuse, self-harm and mental damage occurring at the Australian Detention Centre. The appeal court turns down a Crown bid to have life in prison without parole for convicted murderers under the three-strike law. So when will three strikes be applied? Andrew Little on student debt, the very high cost of sewage treatment in Franz Joseph. And has the government's position changed on police numbers? All of that and more in a busy old checkpoint over the next 89 minutes. But first, Katrina Batten with RNZ News.
Kia ora, good evening. The Prime Minister says the record number of work visas and residence applications is not displacing local workers from the job market. John Key says unemployment is low at 5.2% and falling. Here's our political reporter, Demelza Leslie.
More than 200,000 people were issued temporary work visas in the year ending June, almost 30,000 more than the year before. The number of new residents rose 20% over the same period to 52,000. John Key says those people allowed in are filling roles where there are skills shortages and no New Zealander available to do the job. The Labour Party MP Phil Twyford says the rising number of people being allowed into New Zealand exacerbates the pressure on the already overheated housing market. He says the Reserve Bank has called upon the government to review its immigration policy, and his party agrees. From Parliament, Demelza Leslie.
Injured Seven star Sonny Bill Williams will return to New Zealand for surgery, but not until the end of his team's Olympic campaign. Williams has been ruled out of rugby for 9 months after he ruptured his Achilles tendon in New Zealand's shock loss to Japan this morning. Speaking to John Campbell from his hospital bed a short time ago, Williams said he didn't want sympathy because his injury was just a speed bump. He said he'll stay in Rio to support his team until their last game and urges New Zealanders to get behind them. And you can hear that interview with Sonny Bill Williams on Checkpoint after the news. Details have been leaked of the extent of the trauma and abuse being suffered by children held in detention by Australia on the island of Nauru. More than 2,000 incident reports have been published by the Guardian newspaper today. They detail a wide range of abuse involving children, including assaults, sexual assaults and self-harm in camps used to detain asylum seekers while their claims are dealt with by the Australian government. The BBC's Phil Mercer reports.
The leaked documents, totalling more than 8,000 pages, paint a picture of routine dysfunction and cruelty in the Australian-run detention facility on Nauru. A traumatised girl allegedly sewed her lips together while a staff member laughed at her. Another guard is said to threaten to kill a boy. There are also widespread allegations of sexual assault. The Australian government has reportedly told The Guardian that it continues to support Nauruan authorities to provide for the health, welfare and safety of children in detention.
Phil Mercer in Sydney. The Crown's bid to have 2 murderers sentenced to life without any possibility of parole under the 3 strikes rule has failed. The Crown appealed the sentences of Justin Vance Turner and Shane Pierre Harrison, who were sentenced to life with minimum non-parole periods of 15 and 13 years respectively for separate murders. Edward Gay reports.
When Turner and Harrison committed their murders, they were both on their first strike for previous offending. Under the 3 strikes legislation, someone who commits murder on their second strike should be sentenced to life without parole, unless it's manifestly unjust. Both sentencing judges found that to be the case, but the Crown took the case to the Court of Appeal, arguing they should be behind bars for the rest of their lives. The Court of Appeal rejected that, however it did increase Turner's minimum jail term from 15 to 17 years. Ko Edward Gay tēnei.
The Earthquake Commission is proposing to cut the number of staff in its offices nationwide almost in half by the start of next year. EQC is consulting with staff on the changes, which would see the Commission shrink from 868 to 383 roles nationwide by January 2017. The most jobs would go in Canterbury, with 242 fewer positions becoming available. The Commission's Chief Executive, Ian Simpson, says work in the region is entering its final phase.
We are maintaining the resources this year to get through the vast majority of the work that we need to complete this year. So this is the structure that comes into place from the 1st of January 2017. We aim to have completed most of our targets over that period. And then as we go through 2017, this is a transitional structure.
Ian Simpson says the new structure is expected to be finalised by late next month. In sport, the New Zealand Sevens coach Sir Gordon Titchin says they'll use the loss of star players Sonny Bill Williams and Joe Webber as motivation in their quest to win gold. The All Black Sevens were upset 14-12 by Japan in their first pool game and were dealt a triple blow when Williams and Webber suffered tournament-ending injuries. They bounced back to beat Kenya 28-5, and now they must beat Great Britain in their final pool game overnight to give them a chance of making the quarter-finals. Titchin says they now have extra motivation to win.
The character's there, the will and the want was there in that last game, and they're hurting big time after that first performance, and so they should be. We've got to turn that around now and do a positive and play every game for those two guys, because it's they meant so much to this team. They can't be part of it. They're devastating.
New Zealand's final pool game against Great Britain is at 3:30 tomorrow morning. Meanwhile, the New Zealand women's footballers have failed to qualify for the Olympic quarterfinals after losing their final pool match 3-0 to France. And the greatest Olympian of all time, Michael Phelps, has continued his winning record with 2 more gold medals in the pool. The American swimmer became the first person to win 20 gold medals at the Olympics after winning the men's 200-metre butterfly final. Less than an hour later, he won his 21st gold in the men's 4x200-metre freestyle relay to take his overall medal tally to 25. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, the lay preacher John Thornley continues his celebration of spiritual pop songs with Bob Dylan's Like a Rolling Stone. We have a window on the world of the 14th Amendment of the US Constitution and who gets to call themselves American, officially. And this week's overseas correspondent Rashid Abu Alouf reports in from the Gaza Strip, if we can get through to him, on Nights with me, Brian Crump, after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
Met Service weather through to midnight tomorrow. Northland, scattered showers, some heavy and possibly thundery. Showers easing tomorrow and fine spells developing. Auckland and Coromandel Peninsula, periods of rain, sometimes heavy with possible thunderstorms, localised downpours possible in the east. Rain easing tomorrow morning. Waikato and Bay of Plenty, cloudy, scattered rain, mostly north of Tauranga and Hamilton, clearing tomorrow afternoon. Waitomo to Wellington, including the Central High Country and Wairarapa, mainly fine but a few showers possible in Waitomo, Taumaranui and Taranaki tomorrow. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, cloudy periods, a few showers, clearing in Hawke's Bay tomorrow. For all the South Island, apart from Fiordland, mainly fine but becoming cloudy in Westland and Bulla tomorrow evening. Fiordland becoming cloudy tomorrow and a few showers developing about the fjords, turning to rain at night. And the Chatham Islands, cloud clearing today, they're mainly fine. It's 5:08.
Thanks, Katrina. Lots on the programme tonight. Coming up, we're going to talk to the journalists that those extraordinary documents about Nauru were leaked to. We're also going to look at Māori and the Unitary Plan and 3 strikes and the appeal court. But we're going to begin at the Olympics. It's being called Terrible Tuesday because people like alliteration. We'll get to that in a moment. But first, injured Sevens star Sonny Bill Williams has spoken for the first time since rupturing his Achilles tendon in New Zealand's shock loss to Japan this morning, urging New Zealanders to get behind the rest of the Sevens team as they continue their Olympics. Williams says he doesn't want sympathy. He's fortunate not to have been injured earlier. He says his injury is a speed bump and he'll be staying in Rio until the end of his team's campaign to cheer them on. He spoke to me from his hospital bed a short time ago, and of course I asked him how he was.
I'm great, mate. To be honest, I'm great. I've had a lot of love and a lot of messages today, but to be honest, I don't really want anyone to feel sorry for me, bro, because I've been blessed in my life beyond things that I couldn't even imagine, happened to me in my life. And I've had a good run without injuries, and this is just a speed bump. My injury is secondary to the team and the team trying to go all the way to that gold medal. And I'm not leaving until that last game, and hopefully the boys are playing for a gold medal in that game, mate.
You know, I know you really mean that. I know you absolutely mean that. But also, and forgive me for making you focus on yourself, which is something you work terribly hard not to do. You are a team man, but you've worked really hard to be here, haven't you? You've worked really hard on your fitness, on the aspects of the Sevens game that weren't part of your repertoire, and it must be at some level a personal disappointment to be out like this.
Oh, 100%. Especially, I really wanted to come into the Olympics because I felt like, you know, I moved into the backs, my preferred position, because everything was starting to click. I was training really well. You know, felt a lot sharper, a little bit quicker, a little bit more powerful. But, you know, at the end of the day, like I said before, I don't need, you know, it's sad, but I don't want anyone to feel sorry for me because, like I said, I've had a amazing ride. I've been blessed beyond things that I could never have imagined. And, you know, I sat down here today, one of the trainers came in and he spoke to me and we went over it and I said, oh, you know, thanks for getting me here to where I am and, you know, obviously learning the game and all of that kind of stuff. But I just said to him, I said, look, at the end of the day, to be honest, if I could go back and do it all over again this year, knowing that I'd get to here to this point and still get this injury, I'd do it because, you know, to be a part of something special, to be an Olympian and have the chance to win a medal, still have a chance to win a medal, it's an amazing feeling and, you know, things happen.
And so you were going to stay there and you were going to encourage the team and you're going to be part of the team.
Oh, 100%, bro, 100%.
The team did remarkably well, I thought, because your injury was a big blow to them psychologically, and you're playing with some really young men there. They lost to Japan, and Japan played magnificently, and they bounced back really wonderfully against Kenya. You must have been proud of them.
Oh, I was really proud. You know, I was really proud. And yes, you know, a lot of these guys haven't even played, you know, some of these guys haven't even played ITM or, you know, Super Rugby, I should say. And, you know, the game of sevens has evolved. It's an Olympic sport and there's so much funding that's gone in from these countries solely to, you know, for these guys to try and win gold. And you just had to see how many 15 players, international 15 players, tried to make sevens this year, but didn't crack it. Just to show how strong all the countries are. There was 10 different tournament winners this year, bro. You know, and I think the general public don't really understand that too much. No. And understand how tough sevens is. So, you know, I'm really proud of the boys, and I truly, honestly believe the talent that these guys got. When they click, they can beat anyone. And you know, I'm confident. I'm really confident going into tomorrow. These guys are asleep now. You know, getting ready for tomorrow. I can't sleep because I'm nervous. On one leg, but if I could, you know, if I could pack all the gear bag and take it down onto the bus now, or go across to the food hall, get all their breakfast and bring it over, I'll do that right now, because, you know, I just, those little 1%ers want to try and help them out, and that's all I can do now, bro. I can't run out there and tackle for them or anything like that, but I'm sure as hell can, you know, be vocal and be behind them.
Speaking of being proud, let's talk about your little sis, Niall, who won a silver medal, and you know now how hard that is, both personally and as a team, to win a silver at the Olympics.
Oh, I just, words can't even explain how proud and the feelings, you know, I had. And, you know, we got a group chat, my family, we're pretty tight, and afterwards, just the messages, you know, that everyone was sending in was pretty cool, just to see where she came from. You know, a year ago she wasn't even in the frame to be in the Olympics, and then 6 months ago she hurt her shoulder, so she was thinking of, you know, having to give it up. But you know, she made it and she got a silver medal. And, you know, not just her sisters that she played with, all those New Zealand sevens girls, really, you know, put sevens on the map for women's, for ladies in New Zealand. And, you know, there's going to be young girls, you know, that are 14, 15, 16 now thinking, shit, I want to, you know, sign up to play some sevens, because that's a dream of being a professional sevens player and winning a gold medal, which the girls came so close to doing.
Sonny Bill Williams talking from his hospital bed a couple of hours ago. The bigger picture, it's been dubbed Terrible Tuesday for the New Zealand Olympic team in Rio, as several medal bids didn't have a great day at all. The men's hockey and sevens team were both stunned and upset losses. Sonny Bill talking about that loss to Japan. They did bounce back against Kenya, while the football ferns crashed out of the group stage. And so Mark Todd on the brink of clinching gold in the team event for his 6th medal. He could have knocked down one rail and still done so. As you've heard, he knocked down 4 rails to finish 4th. Max Toll has been looking at this.
Sky Sports coverage of the moment the eventing team's gold hopes went off the rails. Needing only to knock down 1 rail, the 60-year-old legend Sir Mark dropped 4, and the eventing team dropped out of contention. He described it as a bitter pill to swallow.
I couldn't imagine my horse having 4 fences down. I mean, it's just, you know, he's never done that before. The horse felt like I hadn't ridden him for a week, let alone he'd done, you know, all the cross-country the day before. And he is a very full-on sort of horse, and he reacts a lot to atmosphere and movement. And I felt him just before my time to go down in the ring. I felt him get a little bit wound up and agitated, and then when he got in there he was sort of quite distracted, and when he's like that he doesn't really listen.
The day had already gotten off to a disastrous start when the men's sevens side was stunned 14-12 by Japan. To make matters worse, Sonny Bill Williams was carried off with an Achilles injury that will keep him sidelined for up to 9 months. The side's coach, Sir Gordon Titchin, says it was a tough introduction to the Olympics.
Credit to them, they played particularly well. I felt we played badly, we prepared, we planned for it, and of course we just didn't get up for it. And in sevens rugby, unfortunately now, any given day, any team can beat any team.
The team did thrash Kenya 28-5 later on, but still needs to beat Great Britain tomorrow and rely on other results to make the knockout stages. Elsewhere, there was disappointment in the pool as no New Zealander managed to make a final, while in hockey the men's team fell 3-2 to Spain. In rowing, Mahi Drysdale and Emma Twigg went through as expected, but both the men's and women's double sculls teams fell. The final blow came a few hours ago when the football ferns were knocked out of the women's football. They fell 3-0 to France in their last game, a result their coach Tony Redding says is very disappointing.
We had chances and we've got to take them. You know, you're never going to get that many against France, but we had enough good quality ones to actually cause them some problems, but we weren't able to take ours and they were able to take theirs, and at the end of the day that's football. It's just no matter what you do and how well you play, if you can't convert, then it's always going to make it hard.
Things could get a little brighter tomorrow with a medal contender in the road race, cyclist Linda Willemsen, and Mike Dawson is a good shout for making tomorrow's kayak slalom final. For Checkpoint, Max Toll.
Meanwhile, a bus carrying journalists from the Games basketball venue in Rio to the main Olympic park was hit by gunfire. Windows shattered and flying glass left 2 people with minor injuries. Ashraf Fahim reports.
Journalists covering the Olympics in Rio had a close call on Tuesday night when they say their bus came under fire. Passengers say 2 shots were fired, shattering the bus's windows. There were no serious injuries. Olympic volunteer Kankork Maz was on the media bus and said it all happened suddenly.
We were on the highway going fast and we heard a loud noise and we just got shot at, 2 in those, and we could see the bullet.
The bus was traveling from the basketball venue to the main Olympic park.
I guess we're all lucky to be alive now.
Rio's violent street crime had already left its mark on South America's first Olympic Games. On Saturday, a bullet suspected to have been shot by a gang member hit the Equestrian Center, missing journalists there by just a few feet.
That's it from the Olympics for the time being, although later we will ask, should Olympic events be available free, live on free-to-air TV? Coming up on Checkpoint, Nauru and those secrecy-ending papers. We're about to speak to the journalists. They were leaked to 3 strikes. When will it ever be applied? That is the life without parole provision. And the parade the Hurricanes waited 21 years for through central Wellington. All of that and more coming up. We'd love to hear from you in any way you choose. If you are a texter, the number is 2101. If you are an emailer, it's checkpoint@radionz.co.nz. And don't forget, of course, Twitter and Facebook. 5:20. Assaults, sexual assaults, bullying, blackmail, self-harm and reports of a child with their lips sewn together. The Guardian newspaper has been leaked by a whistleblower or whistleblowers, plural, more than 2,000 incident reports from Australia's Nauru detention camp, and they've published them online in a searchable database. Whatever successive Australian governments have claimed and denied is happening on Nauru, these documents tell a stark story of violence, sexual violence and physical and mental harm. The Australian government has maintained a regime of secrecy around its offshore detention centres, but as The Guardian itself says, the Nauru files shatter that secrecy. Paul Farrell is the Sydney-based Guardian journalist the documents were leaked to.
So these incident reports are published when a serious event happens in the detention centre. So that can range from an allegation of a sexual assault to a self-harm attempt to an actual self-harm to a fight. But it can also be things like accidents and injuries. Basically anything which triggers that sort of response from the companies on the island who have been contracted by Australia to manage that detention facility. So what it really does is produce a staggering portrait of everyday life on Nauru. It's everything. It's everything that happened on a given day in Nauru. You can go through, you can search by day, you can search by month, you can search by category of incident. It's the most comprehensive portrait we've ever seen of this detention facility.
Is it remotely credible that the Australian government didn't know that this was happening?
Unfortunately, John, it's not. And the reason is that these incident reports have been made to comply with the Australian Immigration Department's reporting protocols. They get these incidents. They know what's happening there. But all these serious reports are continuing to occur. This data set goes up to October 2015, so it's very recent, and it post-dates the Moss, what's described as the Moss review into sexual assault allegations. It post-dates the Australian Human Rights Commission's report, and it post-dates a Senate inquiry report into these kind of incidents and shows that they have continued to occur. It will be up to the government to determine what action, if any, it decides to take following the publication of these documents. But clearly, it needs to manage this perception, and this perception that is backed by very extensive evidence in these incident reports and in many other reports, that Australia is involved in, some quite concerning allegations surrounding the treatment of asylum seekers and other people who are supposed to be in its care.
Well, Paul, you say they're concerning allegations. In fact, prima facie, these are statements of fact, aren't they? They're incident reports. So this stuff has happened.
Well, exactly. This is the eyewitness testimony from guards and caseworkers on the island. So I think it provides extremely strong and credible evidence that, many of these things should be taken as factual propositions. But of course, we do have to be careful with that, because sometimes an allegation can be made on occasion that on later investigation may transpire to be something else. But I think clearly when you have eyewitnesses on the ground reporting these events and providing this testimony, the probative value of that evidence is extremely high. And Australia certainly needs to be aware that is what people are going to consider about these documents, and it has to be aware that it may face criticism in the international arena, and certainly it's already facing criticism domestically relating to these files, because they clearly show that these people on the ground who are meant to be protecting these asylum seekers, the guards, the caseworkers, the child protection workers, are saying this is happening. They are filing reports on it. They are saying we need to do something about this.
Paul Farrell, the Guardian reporter the documents were released to. If you want to read those reports and find out more about them, there is a searchable database of all of them obtainable through the Guardian's website. It's 25 minutes past 5. The Hurricanes had a victory parade today, 21 years in the making. It's important to remember, of course, that the Super Rugby team is a regional one, not just a Wellington side. It represents the entire Lower North Island, from Whanganui across to Gisborne and the East Coast, south to Hawke's Bay, Manawatu, Wairarapa and Wellington. And it was Wellington that the victory parade took place in, from Parliament along Lambton Quay to the Civic Square. And our camerawoman, Rebecca Parsons-King, went along for the ride so we could talk to the triumphant players, beginning with Victor Vitor.
Oh, it's surreal. It's, you can't describe it. It's just awesome to finally, after all these years, seasons for me, but also for the legends that have passed, to finally bring something back for our city and our region in general. It's awesome.
It's magic. Is there lots of people there?
Yeah, there's lots of people here. We always get nervous ourselves coming down to a parade and not knowing how many people are going to be here, but there's got to be thousands of people here, so it's pretty awesome.
This is a wonderful end to your career, isn't it? 100 games with the Hurricanes. You win the final on Saturday night. You get a farewell parade before you head off to France. How are you feeling personally?
I'm feeling pretty satisfied with everything that's happened so far and the way ahead and with 100 games. And obviously at the final and to win the thing at the end. This group of men, it's pretty amazing, you know. Obviously last year happened, guys were very gutted, but to have the crew come on this year and everyone put their hands up right from 1 to 36 or whatever it is for the squad, it's amazing. It's good to have done it as a team.
Wonderful. Victor, who are you with? Who's with you on the back of the truck? You on a truck? What are you on?
Yeah, we're on the back of a trailer. So I've got a Tongan Bear here, I've got Michael Fino, I've got Michael Phelps, Corey Jane, Dej Bernard, I've got Ben Mail, I've got a whole board of guys here. So.
What's Corey doing at the moment? Is he busy?
Corey's not busy at all. Would you like to talk to him?
Yeah, can you pass the phone over to him? Do you mind, Victor?
Nah, not at all. Come here. Corey J. Corey J. Corey J. Hold on. Just wait. Yeah. It's John Campbell.
Oh, John.
Oh, JC.
Hello, man.
Corey, it's John Campbell. How are you?
I'm very good, man. I'm very, very good.
This is pretty magic, isn't it?
Oh, it's cool. It's, first of all, it's good to win for the Hurricanes. We haven't done it for so long. A lot of support here too.
Come on, man! And Corey, how are you feeling personally? Because it's the end of a wonderful era for you too, isn't it?
Oh, it's cool. I just wanted to, know what it felt like to be a Super Rugby champion. A lot of teams have won it around the competition, and everyone in New Zealand except for us. So, and we've been to the final last year, and then they won in 2006 to lose it. So it's good to win. I know some of the fans get a little bit grumpy because we have so much talent, but we can't put it out on the field and win in a dying minute. So it's good to win. I'm satisfied. I've had a long career, but it's cool to win this, and I still got some more games left in me.
It's been a wonderful career. What did Saturday night mean for you personally? I saw you briefly afterwards, and you were grinning, fit to burst. What did it feel like?
Oh, it's hard to describe, really. Like I said to a few other people, it'll probably be another couple of days away where I really sit down and think about what we've achieved here and how much it means to not only myself but everyone that's been involved and supported us. But I know Saturday was pretty cool. Just seeing the look on the lads' faces, how much we worked hard this year and we believed in each other. And I think that's the coolest thing about this team, is that everyone believed it and we really worked hard to win it. And that's what made the team. It made us so close, and to win it, I'm just proud of the boys.
Yeah, and the city's proud of you, which is really magic. Can you describe the scene around you now? What's going on, Corey?
Yeah, we're cruising down Lambton Quay. I think we're still on Willis Street at the moment. A lot of people. We didn't know that many people were going to turn up, but it just goes to show how many people love the Hurricanes and really wanted this. So everyone's here.
Well, they stopped to let them
down the boys' names, especially the Tongan Bear. They love him. But it's cool. It's a great feeling.
Corey, congratulations, and it's so lovely to talk to you, and really well done. Is Lonnie there? Is he anywhere near you?
He's marvellous, John. Yes, I'll go get Lonnie now.
Corey, thank you. Marvellous, Corey, thank you. Marvellous.
John Campbell, bro.
Oh, John Campbell, my brother.
How are you, Lonnie? How are you going?
John, how are you, mate?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, bro. I'm good, man. Where are you? You're supposed to be in a trailer with me, mate.
I'd love to be there, Lonnie. What's it feel like to be in the trailer, Lonnie?
Oh, mate, it's unreal, you know. See these people, like, you know, skipping work and skipping school to come see us is special, you know. It's pretty good, eh?
It's been a magic season for you, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been magic, all right, but yeah, we wouldn't do it without the responsible boys in the crowd, so yeah, big up to them.
And Lonnie, you've become a total cult hero. They love you in Wellington, don't they?
Oh, mate, I don't know what happened, but yeah. Cheer, Mumsy! They love it.
What can you see, Lonnie? What's going on around you?
Oh, just people everywhere, mate. People everywhere, black and yellow everywhere, and yeah, boys really appreciate it. Come to me and work and stuff, so oh, mate, it's magic.
On the back of the truck with the Hurricanes, it's 5:31. Katrina in about 30 seconds. But first, what's coming up? Why 300 West Coast ratepayers, just 300 of them, could face a $6 million bill to pay for their own sewage system. And the Labour leader, Andrew Little, on wiping or reducing student debt, student loans, for police officers or teachers or maybe other people who choose to take up their jobs in the regions. This seems to be a work in progress, this policy. We'll talk to Andrew a little about it shortly. But first, here is Katrina with the headlines.
The Prime Minister says the record number of work visa and residence applications is not displacing local workers from the job market. John Key says unemployment is low at 5.2% and falling. More than 200,000 people were issued temporary work visas in the year ending June, up almost 30,000 on the year before. The number of new residents rose 20% to 52,000. Mr Key says those allowed in are filling roles where there are skills shortages and no New Zealander available to do the job. Injured Seven-star Sonny Bill Williams will return to New Zealand for surgery, but not until the end of his team's Olympic campaign. Williams has been ruled out of rugby for 9 months after he ruptured his Achilles tendon in New Zealand's shock loss to Japan this morning. Speaking to John Campbell from his hospital bed, Williams said he didn't want sympathy because his injury was just a speed bump. Human rights advocates say the leak of a huge archive of files detailing allegations of abuse on Nauru shows the Australian government has failed to address concerns about the treatment of adults and children in detention. More than 2,000 incident reports published on the Guardian website outline various allegations of abuse, including assaults, sexual assaults and self-harm between 2013 and 2015. The Earthquake Commission is proposing to almost halve staff numbers by January, from 868 to 383 roles nationwide. The most jobs, 242, would go in Canterbury. Civil Defence is encouraging motorists north of Auckland not to drive because of surface flooding. Another 30 to 60 millimetres of rain is expected to fall over the next 6 hours north of Orewa and also on Great Barrier Island. State Highway 16 has reopened after floodwaters forced its closure this morning. However, Civil Defence says more flooding and slips could occur and drivers should take extreme care or avoid travelling. Those are the headlines. I'll be back at 6 with more news, sport and weather.
Thanks, Katrina. Coming up, Māori, the Auckland Council, the Unitary Plan and the Mana Whenua site protections. All of that and more before 6. Business time now, though, with Jonathan Mitchell. And Sky City's result disappointed the market today, Jonathan.
That's right, they had a weak May and June, so that weighed on trading conditions in that last part of the financial year. The share price fell today as much as 5% after the result came through. It ended down 3.5% or by 18 cents to finish at $4.96. They didn't give any guidance about July or August. We may hear more about that at the annual meeting in a few months' time. That profit result, though, for the year, the net profit came in at about $146 million. That's 13% up on the previous year, mainly driven by the Auckland casino. That international high roller business, though, that's still a big one for Sky City, and that was up 33% to $12.4 billion, so that's a big earner. Elsewhere around the group, the Hamilton Queenstown made gains, but there was a bit of pullback in Darwin.
Yeah, what do they say about their outlook, given the downturn in the past couple of months?
That's right. They're expected to reveal more in a few months' time. They did give some general comments about where they see things going. Here in New Zealand, the strong tourism sector is seen as one aspect which will benefit them in the outlook for the long term. In Australia, though, the broader economic conditions are expected to be tough. Those trading conditions will still be tough for Darwin. They're looking to get more earnings, though, out of Adelaide. One thing they did mention, though, on both sides of the Tasman, they're both going to benefit from tourists from Asia.
Yeah, this is fascinating, this business. ASB, they have posted a record profit, have they? Certainly up on year, is it, Jonathan?
Yeah, up 6% to $913 million. They've cut costs and increased lending to get that result. It is feeling the impact, though, of tighter margins, and they are putting more aside, though, for bad debts. That's due to a weakness in the dairy sector. Farmers facing a third season in a row of cash losses. So they've now got $130 million put aside for bad and doubtful debts. That's up about 50% on the previous year.
Yeah, that's a big increase, isn't it?
That's right.
Now, speaking of banks, interest rates, D-Day tomorrow, right? The Reserve Bank making that announcement.
You expect a rate cut to a record low 2%. Most economists in a poll by Reuters are expecting it to happen. Look for a statement actually that gives a further easing bias, so certainly below 2%, but certainly a lower interest rate would weigh on the housing market. We've had those figures out today from the Real Estate Institute showing the national median above $500,000, records around the place, including Auckland. So those are the sorts of things the Reserve Bank has to weigh up when it decides to move on the official cash rate. We'll be covering that live tomorrow morning from 9 o'clock when the statement comes out.
Thanks very much, Jonathan. Just quickly, the markets.
The NZX Top 50 Index fell back 14 points to end at 7,350. The dollar stronger, though, at 72.15 US cents and 93.7 Australian.
Jonathan Mitchell, live from our Wellington newsroom. Thanks, Jonathan. The 300 ratepayers who call the West Coast town of Franz Josef home could face a $6 million bill. If the region votes, they have to pay for their own sewage system. The small town's 2 oxidation ponds were badly damaged, of course, when the Waiho River flooded earlier this year. You'll remember those floods. Now, the local council has come up with a proposal for a new $6.2 million wastewater plant, but is consulting the wider region on who pays for it. Sally Murphy explains.
The current sewage ponds were built in the 1970s and were designed to accommodate a population of about 500 people. No allowances were made for seasonal tourist demand. The ponds were left severely damaged after the Easter floods, and now ratepayers in the Westland district have 3 options on how to pay for the new system. All ratepayers contribute, only Franz Josef ratepayers pay for it, or 50-50 split. Westland District Council mayoralty candidate Bruce Smith questions if the new plant is even necessary. He says the current ponds could be fixed and widened for a much cheaper cost.
Build a 3.8 hectare pond on the council land and carry on for the next 30 or 40 years. The last pond was built in 1975. The maintenance costs every year have been virtually nil because it's gravity fed. The council's come up with this plant and wants $150,000 a year to run it.
Mr Smith says locals are fed up because the council has provided very little information about the new sewage plant.
Council completely walked all over everybody in the community in relation to that and said, you're going to get a new plant, it's going to cost $6.5 million, and the only thing we're prepared to consult on is who's going to pay for it, what are the options?
Franz Josef Community Development Officer Helen Lash says it is unclear how the council came to a figure of $6.2 million.
We've seen a design, a very basic drawing of a shed, the proposed site, which we're not happy about. It is in an area of town that's been recognised as prime tourism development area, and it's actually zoned commercial, not industrial.
Ms Lash says the council is holding public meetings on the proposed sewage system and its funding models across the district in coming weeks. She hopes more information will be available.
It's just really, really frustrating, and we've got to the stage where we are sort of getting at the end of our tether as far as tolerance of the whole situation. There's this urgency to get it done, there's this urgency to get the funding assessed. We do know that the Regional Council and the District Council, they've got an Environment Court situation over our existing ponds. To know that there's a time frame on that could have helped us in making some decisions, but again, without information, we can't make those decisions.
Westland District Mayor Mike Havel could not be reached for comment today. Submissions on how the new sewage system should be paid for close on the 8th of September. The council is expected to make a decision on the payment model by the end of September. For Checkpoint, ko Sally Murphy tēnei.
Would you work as a teacher or a police officer perhaps in the regions if that saw your student debt wiped or more probably cut down? The Labor Party is considering a policy which would see student debts reduced in exchange for people taking so-called public service jobs in the region. At least that's what they're discussing. Labor leader Andrew Little told me the idea follows the party's multi-billion-dollar policy of 3 years free tertiary education announced earlier this year.
As I get around and talk to people about that, particularly young people and their parents, what I often get is, well, what about those with loans now? What about those with student debt now? And it's a legitimate question. We've over $15 billion of student debt. What we started talking about in Labor is how we can address that, and we've looked at the health sector. They've got a scheme, a sort of effectively a bonding scheme, where if you go and work in the public health sector in hard-to-recruit areas, then they do effectively a loan write-off. And we've just started the discussion about how we can extend that beyond the health sector, obviously. Easy enough to do in the public sector, but then the conundrum is how do you work that in with the private sector?
And how do you do that? Because, sorry, forgive me, but I want to back up the truck a bit. You went to university, didn't you?
Indeed.
Okay, and was it free when you went?
Yes, I was probably one of the last. I was in the last year, in fact, when we didn't have excessive fees.
How old are you, Andrew?
51.
Yeah, I'm 52, and I think I remember.
Well, you're here to me, so
So I think I paid $130 at the beginning of the year, and that was that. So
that's right.
So we went to university for free.
Yeah.
And then there is an entire generation of people who are indebted up to the eyeballs. Right. Now, Labor are looking at saying, hey, look, this is no good. We want people to have tertiary education. What the hell do you do with the people in the middle?
That is the real problem, because what we're also, there are plenty of studies showing that this is starting to affect life choices about owning your own home, choices about starting a family, and that issue is becoming quite serious now, and it's a pretty consistent theme in correspondence I get and that all MPs are getting about what we're doing. So we have to deal with it, and we've got this huge amount of student debt sitting on the government books.
$15 billion. $15 billion, which you can't write off in any way, shape or form, can you?
Certainly not in a hurry, and certainly not the whole lot, that's for sure. I mean, remember that the government books treat this as an asset. The government says this is an asset, it's all going to be repaid. But the reality is it's not. There are significant write-offs happening now, and of course much of it's interest-free, so there's a cost to the taxpayer anyway. What we're saying is there's already a cost. Let's be sensible about it. We know there are issues about recruiting into a whole variety of roles in the regions in particular, and actually in Auckland as well, and public sector roles in Auckland because of the cost of housing. So we have to kind of find an answer to that as well.
And what is the answer going to be? I mean, and yesterday I was having this conversation with Judith Collins, and I said, hey, you're just making up policy as you go along, or in the case of Judith Collins, are you just reacting to Winston Peters? Are you just reacting to the fact you were speaking to student radio and you were playing to a home crowd?
No, I think it's pretty clear. I mean, this is an issue that's come up in many meetings I've had, and Chris Hipkins has had this year. We've both given the same answer, that this is an area that we are thinking about, that we need to do more on. We don't have a specific commitment to make, but we are conscious that it is an issue, and so we will have something specific. But people are entitled to know that we are at least thinking about this.
Okay, so the specifics are that you will potentially reward people or bond people in a way that encourages them to take jobs in regions where, one, people don't want to live, or two, where the cost of living is so high people can't afford to live. Is that the sort of thing you're looking at?
That's the principle, yes.
Okay, and how much will that cost? How much of the $15 billion of student debt will suddenly disappear?
Yeah, well, that's the, dare I say, $64,000 question. So we start with the principle, and we know what the objectives are, and then you've got to work out what the cost is and the time frame over which you can do that. Now, that's why we're not at the point of making specific commitments. But as I say, I think people are entitled to know that we're thinking in this area, thinking about what it means for private sector jobs as well, knowing that we're prepared to look at a workable plan. We know that cost is going to be an issue. You can't just, magic up $15 billion and write it off your balance sheet in an instant. and it is going to take an extended period of time to get something up and running. But this is where we're going.
Okay, so when will, given that the election is, roughly 14, 15 months away, somewhere in that ballpark.
Possibly less, yeah.
Yeah. When would you expect to have a formal and costed policy on the table?
I would expect sometime by early next year.
Andrew Little talking to me a short time ago. The Crown's bid to have 2 murderers locked up for life has failed. Justin Vance Turner and Shane Pierre Harrison committed separate murders and were sentenced to life in prison with minimum non-parole periods of 15 and 13 years respectively. Both have extensive criminal histories and both had already received warnings under the controversial 3 strikes legislation. Now, the legislation says someone who commits murder on their second strike should be sentenced to life without parole unless it's manifestly unjust. The judges in both cases found that to be the case. The Crown took the case to the Court of Appeal, arguing both men should be locked up without the possibility of parole, consistent with 3 strikes. The Court of Appeal has now ruled against the Crown, arguing that both men should be eligible for parole one day. Nick CHISNALL represented one of the murderers, Justin Turner, at the Court of Appeal. I asked him why this ruling is significant.
The first and most important aspect to it is that it actually provides a clear framework for both lawyers and, of course, judges to be able to work to decide whether, in fact, it's manifestly unjust to impose life without parole.
The issue is, of course, the 3 strikes legislation does that. So the issue, I guess, is with the law. And you asked the appeal court to say, hey, send this back to Parliament, let's redo it. They've kind of kicked for touch there, it seems to me.
Well, they've not so much kicked it to touch as left it for another day. They've taken an approach that recognises that if they had adopted what the Crown suggested for what manifestly unjust means, it would raise issues around breaching the Bill of Rights Act. So what they've done is taken a more expansive view that they say allows it to be rights consistent. So in many ways, the way that they've approached the test really answers the primary concern that we raised about the legislation.
Right, so you represented Justin Turner.
Yes.
His second strike was a murder, wasn't it?
That's right, yes.
And so under the 3 strikes law, if your second strike is a murder, that's it. It's life without parole, right?
That's right, unless manifestly unjust.
And so your argument is that this is manifestly unjust and the appeal court has upheld that?
That's correct. Obviously, at first instance, His Honour Justice Walford agreed that or concluded, I should say, that it would be manifestly unjust to impose life without parole.
So under what circumstances then, Nick, as a defence lawyer, would you regard it as manifestly just for somebody to get life without parole?
Well, it's hard to predict the type of case that would easily fall into it, although the Court of Appeal gave some examples of egregious murders, so examples of the worst kind, which would clearly engage the section, but also recognised that at the other end of the spectrum you're often dealing with cases which, of course, while murder is understandably naturally serious, don't really fit into that worst offender category.
Yeah, it does seem strangely subjective, doesn't it? And
absolutely.
So, I mean, what is manifestly unjust? I suspect everyone listening to this will have a different definition of it. So,
absolutely, and of course, much of the argument turned on whether it was worth taking an approach consistent with the way that term's been defined in other sections of the Sentencing Act. So Section 102, which talks about departure from the presumption in favour of life imprisonment, and then Section 104, which is a provision that deals with a presumption in favour of a 17-year plus minimum period of imprisonment. And so what's, I think, important here is that the Court of Appeal has recognised that the way you interpret that particular test has to keep in mind the consequences for the offender. And so they've set the bar a little lower than what has been said in those other sections.
So are you saying, and is the Court of Appeal saying, the law is an ass, and if so, what happens next?
Well, I can't say that the law is an ass, and I don't think that the Court of Appeal is necessarily saying that. What it's saying is that, of course, has a duty to apply the law as it stands. But the problem with the law as it stands is that it's a very broad catchment of offenders. And Parliament has left that safety valve to the courts to decide whether in fact it's manifestly just, as you say, to impose this type of sentence. And that really is a consequence of the changes that occurred when this was going through Parliament. Originally there was going to be a minimum seriousness threshold, but instead we're dealing with strike convictions, and so it is very much a blunt instrument.
Nick Chisnall, would love your feedback on this 3 strikes law and how it's being applied or not, actually. Text 2101 or email checkpoint@radionz.co.nz. And in terms of feedback, the Minister for Tertiary Education, Skills and Employment, Stephen Joyce, says Labour's policy, this is about reducing or wiping student loans if you move to the regions or whatever, could cost billions of dollars, and most people pay back their student loans in about 6 years. He says it would be very unfair to people who do pay back their loans for others to have their loans wiped. What do you think of that issue as well? The police have delivered a dramatic account of drunken excess in the Wellington Party Centre of Courtenay Place. City councillors were told of arrests for fighting and assaults and people passing out alone in freezing conditions. But they got a conflicting account from the hospitality industry, which argued the dangers are exaggerated. The meeting came in the wake of a failed attempt last year to reform central Wellington drinking laws, and councillors are working on a new policy. Eric Frickberg reports.
Last Saturday night, the Wellington City Area Commander, Chris Benjamin, went out on patrol with his frontline officers to Wellington's party centre, Courtenay Place, and he didn't like what he found.
We would have dealt with probably up to a dozen fights or assaults, 10 people who were extremely intoxicated. Outside of that, we would have seen others that were vomiting and able to get themselves out of Courtenay Place.
Inspector Benjamin then described one case where a young woman put herself in a risky situation.
She was found at the bottom of Blair Street in a doorway. She would have been 18. It was really cold on Saturday night, as we all know. She had become isolated from her friends, was extremely intoxicated, was falling to sleep. All she had on was just a slip, and I can't imagine what would have happened if she hadn't been found.
But the Mayor, Celia Wade-Brown, challenged these comments as being anecdotal and not backed up by statistics.
I'm just interested in whether the rate of hazardous drinking is going up or going down.
In my first-hand experience, I don't see any change.
So I don't think personal experience. I want some statistics.
Madam, just calm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Later, the hospitality industry weighed in, with Robert Brewer of Spirits New Zealand telling councillors that drinking was becoming less of a problem, not more.
Hazardous consumption, particularly amongst younger drinkers, is coming down and has been for some time. Overall, we're all consuming less alcohol. In fact, over the last 10 to 15 years, the amount of alcohol available for the New Zealanders at 18 plus has reduced by 25%.
Jeremy Smith of the Hospitality Association told councillors that bar owners are taking their responsibilities seriously.
People wanting to get into venues know they're not going to get past the doorman if they're intoxicated. People know if you want to go out and get into a bar, you need to be well behaved. We found inside bars now, people are better behaved, they're more aware of their friends' behaviour. They also don't kick up a fuss if you say to them, look mate, you've had enough, time to go.
Today's comments won't change policy, but will be used by councillors to help develop new rules on alcohol in the central city. A previous attempt to develop a policy was shot down in legal flames last year, and the council's basically starting again. For Checkpoint, Eric Frickberg.
Let's go to the states where Republican campaign managers are denying that Donald Trump suggested gun owners in the US might want to turn to violence in a bid to stop Hillary Clinton from becoming president. He made the controversial comments at a rally in North Carolina while discussing gun ownership in America. The Clinton campaign said the comments were dangerous and unacceptable. Our US correspondent Simon Marks reports that one former head of the CIA says Trump is lucky not to have been arrested.
Donald Trump cannot help himself in more ways than one. He can't help himself improve his position in the polls because he can't help himself from saying anything that comes into his mind. And so it was in North Carolina. Another rally, another ad-libbed speech, another refusal to work from any kind of prepared text, and another enormous gaffe as he appeared to suggest that supporters of the Second Amendment, that's the bit of the US Constitution that protects the rights of gun owners voters in America might want to get creative in their attempts to stop Hillary Clinton from becoming president.
Hillary wants to essentially abolish the Second Amendment. By the way, and if she gets to pick her judges, nothing you can do, folks. Although the Second Amendment people, maybe there is, I don't know.
He made those comments with a glint in his eye, seemingly aware that he was suggesting an act of gun violence could stop Mrs. Clinton in her tracks. But his campaign went into total crisis mode and insisted he had once again been misunderstood. He merely meant to suggest that gun owners could use their political power at the ballot box this November, according to a Trump spokesman. The Clinton campaign was having none of it, accusing Mr. Trump of dangerous talk and saying no presidential candidate should ever promote violence, especially in a country with such a long history of political assassination.
When I heard that for the first time, that was more than a speed bump.
General Michael Hayden is a former head of the CIA. He told CNN that Donald Trump is lucky not to be facing possible charges over the remark.
If someone else had said that outside the hall, he'd be in the back of a police wagon now, with the Secret Service questioning him.
The truth is that violent language is no stranger to Donald Trump rallies. On a daily basis, his supporters give voice to the view that Mrs. Clinton should be locked up and sometimes strung up or otherwise disposed of violently. He himself has also made violent threats against protesters who have disrupted his speeches. None of this is doing anything to improve his standing in the polls, with the election increasingly looking like a one-horse race, and leaving Donald Trump as the man who can't help himself or control himself as this unprecedented campaign continues. For Checkpoint, I'm Simon Marks in Washington.
5:30 to 6, the government has been pressed to explain an apparent change of heart over increasing police numbers. For months, the government has been insisting that there are enough police officers, but yesterday said numbers could be boosted to keep up with the growing population. Opposition politicians say crime has been rising, while the number of officers on the beat has been static. Political reporter Benedict Collins has more.
Labour's police spokesperson Stuart Nash asked the Police Minister Judith Collins in question time about the government's rethink on police numbers.
Why has she said for months that funding and resources are sufficient and dismissed everyone, including the Police Association, that challenged this, when clearly this is not the case?
The Honourable Judith Collins.
Mr. Speaker, I think I've made it very clear that at the moment it is all right, but the trouble is that we are looking to the future and we're looking to the fact that so many New Zealanders now come back from overseas, the population's rising because of it, and we're no longer losing 40,000 Kiwis every year as we did under a previous government.
Mr. Nash asked why, if the government is looking to the future, the police's new 4-year strategy says police numbers won't be increased until 2020.
Police 4-year plans are police 4-year plans. They're not the government necessarily 4-year plans.
Supplementary question, Stuart Nash.
Did the Minister sign off on that police 4-year plan?
The Honourable Judith Collins.
Most likely at the time, but of course things have moved on.
The New Zealand First MP Derek Ball asked the Minister to explain rocketing crime figures.
Is she aware that raw frontline police data shows that in 2008, police attended 240,000 confirmed offences, compared with 2015, where they attended 280,000 confirmed offences? And how is that, in her and Bill English's and now the Prime Minister's own words, a reduction in crime?
The Honourable Judith Collins.
Mr. Speaker, for that member's benefit, the crime rates are looked at on a per capita basis. The population has increased by about 400,000 in New Zealand because people like living under a John Key-led government.
This week, the New Zealand First leader, Winston Peters, said an election bottom line for his party would be a significant increase, equalling between 1,000 and 2,000 extra police over the next 5 years. From Parliament for Checkpoint, Benedict Collins.
Thanks, Benedict. Coming up to 6 o'clock, and Katrina has just arrived with the RNZ News. After 6, we're going to look at should Olympics be available live on free-to-air television here. We've just promoted the fact that we're going to look at this story, and already there's a lot of feedback coming in. Here's an example. 100%, this person says, Olympics should be free-to-air in this day and age. My kids come home from school gagging to watch it, and all we get are snippets of New Zealand-focused stuff filled with ads. How will our future Olympians, gymnasts, runners, swimmers, etc., get inspired if all they see is family flipping feud? It's ridiculous. If taxpayer money is being used, this listener says, to train Olympians, then surely the taxpayer gets the right to view the results of their investment on TV. Lots of people saying that kind of stuff. We will look at that after 6. Also after 6, why Sonny Bill Williams did a lot of work to get into that Sevens team, got there, got injured, doesn't want sympathy. He didn't win a medal this time, but we pay tribute to Sir Mark Todd and his extraordinary Olympic career, and our record numbers of immigrants displacing local workers plus traffic in Nelson. It's 6 o'clock on RNZ National. However you were joining us, thank you for being with us. I've already told you what's coming up, so we will gently fade the theme and get on with RNZ News with Katrina Batten.
Ngā mihi nui, good evening. The Prime Minister says the record number of work visa and residence applications is not displacing local workers from the job market. John Campbell says unemployment is low at 5.2% and falling. More than 200,000 people were issued temporary work visas in the year ending June, almost 30,000 more than the year before. The number of new residents rose 20% over the same period to 52,000. John Campbell says those people allowed in are filling roles where there are skill shortages and no New Zealander available to do the job. The Labour Party MP Phil Twyford says the rising number of people being allowed into New Zealand exacerbates the pressure on the already overheated housing market. The Australian government says it's urgently seeking advice from the security company at the Nauru detention camp after reports of more than 2,000 incidents of violence were leaked. The reports flesh out previous accounts of the abuse and despair being suffered by the asylum seekers and refugees on the island. Amnesty International's New Zealand Director Grant Baildon rejects the Australian government's claims the incidents detailed in the reports are historical.
Amnesty International totally rejects that. Based on our research, which was conducted just weeks ago, what's in these files is entirely consistent with what's still going on right now.
Grant Baildon. The Australian government says many of the incidents reflect unconfirmed allegations. Injured Sevens star Sonny Bill Williams will return to New Zealand for surgery, but not until the end of his team's Olympic campaign. Williams has been ruled out of rugby for 9 months after he ruptured his Achilles tendon in New Zealand's shock loss to Japan this morning. From his hospital bed, Williams told Checkpoint he didn't want sympathy because his injury was just a speed bump.
My injury is secondary to the team and the team trying to go all the way to that gold medal, and I'm not leaving until that last game, and hopefully the boys are playing for a gold medal in that game.
Sonny Bill Williams says he'll stay in Rio to support his team until their last game and urges New Zealanders to get in behind them. A Court of Appeal finding is being cited as a clear guide for judges deciding whether to sentence a murderer on their second strike to life without the possibility of parole. Justin Vance Turner and Shane Pierre Harrison were sentenced to life with minimum non-parole periods of 15 and 13 years respectively for separate murders. The Crown took the case to the Court of Appeal, arguing both prisoners should serve sentences of life without parole under the three strikes rule. The Crown's appeal was dismissed, and Turner's lawyer, Nick CHISNALL, says that is significant.
The most important aspect to it is that it actually provides a clear framework for both lawyers and, of course, judges to be able to work to decide whether, in fact, it's manifestly unjust to impose life without parole.
Mr CHISNALL asked the court to refer the three strikes legislation back to Parliament for review, but the court has determined that argument should be had on another day. The Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump says his critics are deliberately twisting his words for political gain. Mr Trump earlier surprised many observers with his ambiguous comments regarding Hillary Clinton's proposed reform of US gun laws, in which he suggested the Second Amendment people could thwart her policies. He's now defending those comments, insisting he was telling his supporters to use the power of their vote to stop Mrs Clinton from appointing justices who could restrict their Second Amendment right to bear arms.
People that are in favour of the Second Amendment, they have tremendous political power, and I think they really are strong, they're united. And in fact, the National Rifle Association just came out and they agreed that that is absolutely the way they feel too. We have tremendous power, the people like myself that believe in the Second Amendment.
Donald Trump, Mrs. Clinton's campaign manager, has responded by saying a person seeking to be the President of the United States should not suggest violence in any way. The Earthquake Commission is proposing to cut the number of staff in its offices nationwide, almost in half, by the start of next year. EQC is consulting with staff on the changes, which would see the Commission shrink from about 900 to 383 roles nationwide by January 2017. The most jobs would go in Canterbury, with 242 fewer positions becoming available. The Commission's Chief Executive, Ian Simpson, says work in the region is entering its final phase. He says the new structure is expected to be finalised by late next month. In sport, the football Ferns are out of the Women's Olympic tournament after losing 3-0 to a convincing French side, and with other results not going their way. The Ferns only needed to draw to be assured of their place in the knockout stages, but couldn't repel wave after wave of attack. Their coach, Tony Redding, says he's very disappointed as his team played well, particularly in defence.
We had chances and we've got to take them. You're never going to get that many against France, but we had enough good quality ones to actually cause them some problems. But we weren't able to take ours and they were able to take theirs. And at the end of the day, that's football. It's just no matter what you do and how well you play, if you can't convert, then it's always going to make it hard.
Tony Reddings. The Black Caps paceman Trent Boult says the 2 wickets the New Zealand bowlers took in the final 2 overs on day 4 could prove crucial to their chances of success in the second test against Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe will resume tonight on 58 for 3, trailing New Zealand by 329 runs. The Black Caps need 7 wickets on the final day to win, and Boult says it's doable despite the dull pitch.
It is a very slow and pretty unresponsive wicket, so like I touched on before, it is nice to be able to come back here and only have to grab 7. But I think there's a lot of work to be done. Like I said, that wicket isn't offering much, so I think we've got to be very patient and be willing to take it deep into that last day.
Day 5 gets underway at 7:30. Victory would seal a 2-0 series clean sweep for New Zealand. That's the news.
Heartbreak?
It was a real bitter pill to swallow when, we dropped 4 hours and dropped out of medal contention.
Shock?
There's nothing he could do, really. He was riding well, he was doing everything correctly. For some reason, the horse wasn't on his game.
And disappointment?
He said Leo, his horse, was full of himself. So by the time he got out there later in the afternoon, Mark Todd said that he knew the course. He was much more relaxed. But a bittersweet moment for him.
The tough moments. Susie Ferguson and Guy Ennis, a morning report weekdays from 6. Then on 9 to noon, the big business of illegal waste dumping. And after 10, what influences how we remember the past and imagine the future? University of Auckland psychology professor Donna Rose Addis tells us about her research into depression. Join me, Catherine Ryan, on 9 to noon after morning report on RNZ National.
Met service weather through to midnight tomorrow. Northland, scattered showers, some heavy and possibly thundery. Showers easing tomorrow and fine spells developing. Auckland and Coromandel Peninsula, periods of rain, some heavy with possible thunderstorms. Localised downpours possible in the east. Rain easing tomorrow morning. Waikato and Bay of Plenty, cloudy, scattered rain, mostly north of Tauranga and Hamilton, clearing tomorrow afternoon. Waitomo to Wellington, including the Central High Country and Wairarapa, mainly fine but a few showers possible in Waitomo, Taumaranui and Taranaki tomorrow. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, cloudy periods, a few showers clearing in Hawke's Bay tomorrow. For all of the South Island, apart from Fiordland, mainly fine but becoming cloudy in Westland and Buller tomorrow evening. Fiordland becoming cloudy tomorrow and a few showers developing about the fjords, turning to rain at night. And the Chatham Islands, cloud clearing today, then mainly fine. It's coming up to 6:09.
Thank you very much, Katrina. Olympic fans in Australia, Britain or Canada can watch the Games live on free-to-air TV. But that's not the case in New Zealand. Sky TV is the rights holder in this country, and while it does have a free-to-air channel in Prime, it has no obligation to play anything at any time. In fact, Prime is screening a lot of the Olympics. But, as many of you have been pointing out, and this is a very good example, the do-or-die Sevens game against Kenya this morning was played on Prime about an hour or two after after it took place live. So, this report from Alex Ashton begins with the million-dollar question: should the Olympics be free to watch live?
Definitely, because especially at work, like we want to watch it but we can't. The lady I work with, her nephew's in the swimming or something today, so she can't watch it, so yeah.
Why? Because it's on Sky?
Yeah, it's a poor thing.
People in Auckland today universally agreed the Olympics should be broadcast live on free-to-air television.
Definitely, I'm all for that.
Definitely, because everyone's got an interest in it. It's our money that sends them over there, isn't it?
Definitely, especially the ones that New Zealand have a high participation in.
But as the woman you heard a moment ago demonstrates, it's not. And some events are only available if you're willing to pay for a Sky subscription, which, with the sports channels, is about $80 a month. The New Zealand First MP, Clayton Mitchell, says Canada, Australia and the United Kingdom all have laws in place to ensure people can watch the games for free. He says Sky is fulfilling a moral obligation by offering some viewing on its free channel, Prime, but it's far from ideal.
Generally quite considerably delayed and with advertising. And, look, good on them for having that moral obligation, but what we're saying is we need to have a legal obligation to ensure that sports is broadcasted, or certainly games of national significance, like the games that we've been watching today, are broadcast live and free to air because taxpayers are paying for it.
Clayton Mitchell cites the men's sevens game against Kenya, which was played on Prime, but 2 hours late, by which time he says most people knew the result. Mr Mitchell's drafted a bill which would mean games of national significance have to be broadcast for free.
Whether we do pop-up channel, whether we haven't actually considered, but I know we're in a new age now with online streaming live and free, so that might be some areas that we can modify and change. But as it simply sits on the table today, it's about ensuring that those games that New Zealanders hold dear to themselves can have full access and make sure that it's available to watch without having to pay for it twice.
In short, it's anti-siphoning legislation. Explained here by media lecturer and chair of the Coalition for Better Broadcasting, Peter Thompson.
Basically a no paywall principle, so that certain cultural events have in the first instance at least to be offered to a free provider at a fair price.
Peter Thompson points to Australia, where that's already in place. This Olympics, Channel 7 has the rights and is streaming 900 hours of footage live for free. But he has another suggestion too.
i.e. a single buyer. So if you purchase the rights to the Olympic coverage as a nation through a cultural provider such as, for example, New Zealand On Air, and then you disburse those rights across the media, I think you could cut out a lot of the arguments about just what those rights entailed, because there would be a central public provider and they could provide the rights to all the other media. And that way everybody gets everything.
But Peter Thompson concedes that giving up exclusive use isn't that attractive to a paid provider like Sky, and he says it's unlikely they'd line up to change things from where they are now. For Checkpoint, Alex Ashton.
Injured Sevens star Sonny Bill Williams will return home for surgery to his ruptured Achilles tendon, but not until his Team Sevens campaign is over. Williams has been ruled out of rugby for maybe 9 months after he ruptured his Achilles in New Zealand's shock loss to Japan this morning. He spoke to me from his hospital bed this afternoon and told me he would stay to support his team in pursuit of their goals.
I really wanted to come into the Olympics because I felt like, I moved into the backs, my preferred position, because everything was starting to click. I was training really well. Felt a lot sharper, a little bit quicker, a little bit more powerful. But at the end of the day, like I said before, I don't need. It's sad, but I don't want anyone to feel sorry for me, because, like I said, I've had a amazing ride. I've been blessed beyond things that I could never have imagined. And I sat down here today. One of the trainers came in and he spoke to me, and we went over it. And I said, thanks for getting me here to where I am, and obviously learning the game and all of that kind of stuff. But I just said to him, look, at the end of the day, to be honest, if I could go back and do it all over again this year, knowing that I'd get to here to this point and still get this injury, I'd do it, because, to be a part of something special, to be an Olympian and have the chance to win a medal, still have a chance to win a medal, it's an amazing feeling, and things happen. I'm really proud of the boys, and I truly, honestly believe the talent that these guys got. When they click, they can beat anyone, and I'm confident. I'm really confident going into tomorrow. These guys are asleep now. Getting ready for tomorrow. I can't sleep because I'm nervous. On one leg, but if I could pack all the gear bag and take it down onto the bus now, or go across to the food hall, get all their breakfast and bring it over, I'll do that right now, because those little 1%ers want to try and help them out, and that's all I can do now, bro. I can't run out there and tackle for them or anything like that, but I'm sure as hell can be vocal and be behind them.
Don't worry about me, says Sonny Bill. Support the team. You can hear our full interview with him online. So Mark Todd, one of New Zealand's greatest Olympians, bowed out of his 8th and probably last Olympics in uncharacteristic style. Heading into the final day of the 3-day event, New Zealand was sitting in 2nd place in the team's event and were within striking distance of winning gold. However, it wasn't to be. Sir Mark and his team failed to win a medal after a disappointing end to equestrian showpiece. Matt Chatterton looks back at his distinguished career.
And there it is, a gold medal for New Zealand. One fence on the floor from Ben Arthur and Karen Stives, and Mark Todd is not only New Zealand's first equestrian medalist, New Zealand's first gold medalist.
He was our first Olympic champion in equestrian back when he was known as Mark Todd. Nowadays, he's Sir Mark. In 1984, at the age of 28, he and his horse Charisma won their first gold medal in the individual eventing at the Los Angeles Games. 4 years later, the duo went back-to-back at the Seoul Olympics. At the same games, he won his 3rd medal, a bronze in the teams event. After winning his 2nd bronze at the Sydney Olympics, Sir Mark decided to retire. That was short-lived though. He returned at the 2008 Beijing Olympics before winning his 3rd bronze at the 2012 London Games in the teams eventing competition. Aside from Olympic glory, Sir Mark has also won the famous badminton horse trials 4 times and Burghley 5. He was voted Rider of the 20th Century by the International Federation for Equestrian Sports. Then, in 1988, he was named Supreme Halberg winner and was inducted into the New Zealand Sport Hall of Fame in the same year. After this morning's disappointing end to his Olympic campaign, Sir Mark told RNZ Sports editor Stephen Hewson he was riding a roller coaster of emotion.
The horse felt like I hadn't ridden him for a week, let alone he'd done all the cross country the day before, and he is a very full-on sort of horse, and he reacts a lot to atmosphere and movement, and I felt him just before my time to go down in the ring. I felt him get a little bit wound up and agitated, and then when he got in there he was sort of quite distracted, and when he's like that he doesn't really listen, but he just didn't jump how he normally does, and the rails come down and we paid for it.
Regardless of today's result, Sir Mark Todd will still be remembered as New Zealand's greatest equestrian. But the burning question is, will we see Sir Mark at the Tokyo 2020 Olympics?
Tokyo is too far away, and it's not the right day to make those sort of decisions.
For Checkpoint, call Matt Chatterton Tine.
There have been several twists in the final political debate on Auckland's unitary plan. One of the first major decisions taken during the debate was to not reinstate greater protection for the more than 2,000 sites deemed to be of value for Māori. The Auckland Council basically voted down the mana whenua provisions 12-6. And earlier, 2 Māori representatives agreed not to be part of the debate at all. The members of the Independent Māori Statutory Board appear to be caught up in behind-the-scenes lobbying over potential conflicts of interest, with one of them saying their decision would avoid a possible circus. What's going on here? Our Auckland correspondent Todd Niall reports.
At a personal level, it was clear early on that something was up. The Development Committee Chair, Deputy Mayor Penny Hulse, opened with glowing tributes to the work of the 2 Māori board members on the committee who were expected to continue to be part of the debate. Both have previously been targeted by councillors who argued they were compromised by their other roles on iwi bodies and couldn't vote impartially on the plan. Then this morning a proposal was unveiled to shift the debate from the committee to the full council, which would exclude the Māori members altogether. The Mayor, Len Brown, hinted obliquely at what had been going on.
Over the last few days there has been a lot of discussion, particularly with the Independent Māori Statutory Board, as to what their position would be given all of the challenges of interpreting conflict or non-conflict.
The statutory board chair, David Taipari, who sits on the development committee, had earlier declared he had no conflicts and rejected a claim to the contrary by Democracy Action. The other board member, Leanne Namane, along with 9 councillors, declared potential conflicts and identified which aspects of the plan they would not vote on. But both board members agreed to the debate being shifted away from them, saying they'd already played a major part and were doing what was best for the process. Outside the meeting, I asked board chair David Taipari whether it was really about trying to avoid bad behaviour by some councillors.
I think there is a question about behaviour, but again, from our point of view, our role is to assist council to design and execute policies and plans, and we think we've done that today.
Your fellow member suggested it might have been a circus had it not gone this way. Was that much of a worry?
You spend a lot of time here, Todd. You'll be able to answer that one yourself, I would think.
I put the same question to the committee chair, Penny Hulse, who's been shepherding through the unitary plan from the beginning.
You know, I think people will put a lot of interpretations on this. My sense of what David and Leanne said is that they took their advice, as councillors did, and they've made their decision accordingly. You need to ask maybe some of the councillors about the opportunities for disruptive behaviour. It certainly wasn't from the Independent Māori Statutory Board perspective. Democracy
Action is a group which objects to increased Māori consultation provided for in the unitary plan and was at the meeting. Its founder Lee Short hailed the move as a huge win for democracy and says he doesn't accept Mr Taipari's statement that he had no conflicts.
David Taipari was a signatory to a submission to the Independent Hearings Panel of some 34 pages, so I don't believe that he has absolved himself from any conflict. All of the Independent Māori Statutory Board members have a lot of input into the plan, and I welcome that, but you can't be in developing the plan and then sit in judgment of it.
David Taipari says he's proud of the board's contribution to the plan over more than 3 years. But the end result is that successful lobbying has left Māori without a formal voice in what will now be a lengthy debate on the unitary plan, the blueprint for how the city will develop over the next decades. Mō te hōtaka o te ahihahi e Tamaki Makaurau, ko Todd Niall tēnei.
More people have been approved to work in New Zealand in the last year than ever before. More than 200,000 people were issued temporary work visas in the year to June. That's up almost 30,000 on the previous year. This at a time when some cities are struggling to cope with the demands of burgeoning populations. Jill Bonnet reports.
The number of new residents jumped 20% to 52,000 in the year to June. Demographer Paul Spoonley, the Pro-Vice-Chancellor of the College of Humanities and Social Sciences at Massey University, says New Zealand now has the highest inflow of immigrants of any OECD country.
There is an important policy question and a political question, and that is whether or not we've reached the level of what's called the absorptive capacity of our labour market, and whether we're beginning to displace locals.
The head of the Auckland Chamber of Commerce, Michael Barnett, says about 800 new residents settle in Auckland each week, but many don't work in jobs that address skills shortages in construction, health and technology. An independent economist, Shamabeel Yakov, agrees and says new residents are also putting a heavy burden on larger cities' infrastructure and housing.
There seems to be something missing in the way that we're doing immigration, that despite the record migration levels, their skill shortages are still not being met.
He's reiterated his call for the government to introduce a strategy focusing on overall population numbers, which could then be used to improve immigration policy. Immigration New Zealand says citizens and residents are always given priority for jobs, but employers need to fill vacancies and plug skill shortages. The government, which set residence approvals at 90 to 100,000 in 2014, is now deciding how big the residence programme will be for the next 2 years. For Checkpoint, Jill Bonnet.
Let's go to Nelson, which appears no closer to having a new road built to solve its traffic woes, despite most people supporting it. In the latest survey, 61% were in favour of building the new Southern Link Road to take pressure off Rocks Road around Nelson's waterfront. Beautiful road, but very busy. Here's our Nelson reporter Tracy Neal with the latest on the city's long-running road saga.
The New Zealand Transport Agency is leading the investigation into the Nelson Southern Link as part of the government's push to speed up building significant regional roads. Supporters claim the survey results will help towards the goal, But the 61% who said yes to the road was only 1,200 people from the 2,000 who responded. NZTA's Central Regional Director Raywyn Blakely says the feedback so far is only part of the mix.
So we take that feedback and we use it along with other factors and consider what the recommended program for the transport network will be. So we've got a mixture of different feedback and it's all very valuable and will help us with the next phase of the business case process.
Nelson has been talking about whether or not to build a new highway through the city since soon after trains stopped using the route in the mid-1950s. The conflict is about whether to shift State Highway 6 off the city's waterfront and redirect it through another neighbourhood on the city outskirts. Ms Blakely says there's still a long way to go before a solution will be known.
So we're talking about general options, we're not talking about a specific new route, we're talking about a new route. And as we then refine that feedback and look at other factors such as feasibility, affordability, safety, the impacts on the economy, social, environmental, we put all that together and we weigh that all up.
City Councillor Pete Rainey, who's been driving a project to upgrade the waterfront for walkers and cyclists, says he's not against a new road if the research proves it's needed, but he says the current process designed to find out is flawed.
I still think we're drifting around in a myriad of bad polling. The feedback where people could submit yet again throws up the prospect of having the ability to be manipulated. At least 500 of those who responded didn't even provide their name. So I don't think you can take that seriously.
The need to move road freight is a major part of the equation. Nelson doesn't have rail, trucks are getting larger, and Rocks Road, which is part of State Highway 6, has cost millions to maintain in recent years. There's a strong push to get the trucks off that stretch of road. But New Zealand Trucking Association Chief Executive David Boyce says it's the most direct way to the port for the trucks.
They want good access to the port, but they also want to be able to pass through Nelson in a timely manner as well. I mean, sometimes, like trying to get around Rocks Road at peak times, you can blow an hour, and that's not good for productivity.
Mr Boyce says there's no magic answer, and Nelson's hilly terrain doesn't help with finding an alternative, but compromise will be needed from everyone. Raywyn Blakely is urging patience and trust in the process.
Everyone cares about their own environment and we do our best to respect and understand that as we work through the process.
She says it's important to take the time needed to get the right answers. For Checkpoint, Tracy Neal.
6:26 and 50 seconds, Philip Patson. Finally tonight, the Hurricanes had a victory parade today, 21 years in the making, and Adriana Weber was there.
Yeah, you know what it is. Black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow.
It was a sea of black and yellow as thousands of fans, clad in the team's colours, lined Lambton Quay to celebrate the team's triumph. Those eager to see their favourite players were more than happy to see the sunshine after the parade was initially postponed from yesterday because of the rain and cold. Some supporters, both young and old, couldn't contain their excitement as they waited.
Ranger every single game! We've got season passes, we've got the gear! We love it! Yeah! It's been the best season ever! Yeah!
Very excited, mate, all the way from Japan just to see them heading back tomorrow. Once in a lifetime, mate, once in a lifetime.
21 years of being a supporter, you got to be here, It's huge, it's so big.
Wellington turned on a lovely, lovely day, so let's enjoy our boys.
Cheers erupted when the team finally emerged, proudly showing off their trophy.
Ladies and gentlemen, here are your 2016 Investec Super Rugby champions, the Hurricanes!
Captain Dane Coles, who led the team to victory in his first season in the role, told the crowd the team couldn't have managed it without their fans.
We just want to dedicate the championship to the whole Hurricanes region, especially Wellington. All the support we've had has been very humbling. We're just pretty stoked that we could bring the trophy here today and show it off. So just once again, thank you so much. Your support means so much to this team.
Veteran Corey Jane says the team haven't stopped celebrating the win since Saturday's game, and the victory has made all of its players, both past and present, incredibly proud.
We got together on Sunday, FaceTime Conrad Smith and guys like that, and they were excited. We were a bit more excited because we were here celebrating, having a bit of fun, but it's just good to win, and it's good to see how excited old Hurricanes are of us winning this year.
Ardi Savia says it's a momentous occasion.
It means everything, you watch this team when you're a little kid and they fell down many times, and to be a part of the special team they have won it, in 2016 has been awesome.
He hopes the team can go on winning. Long-time Hurricanes fan Mary Bingham has similar hopes. She was thrilled to get players to sign a blanket she's taken to 8 seasons worth of home games.
It's the first time I've let anybody draw on it though. It's been a long time coming. I'm thrilled.
Do you think the occasion meant that it was time to get it signed?
Abso-bloody-lutely. Yes.
Mary Bingham says she'll keep celebrating the win for weeks, maybe even months, and expects other fans to do the same. She says people should be prepared to see the team's colours, black and yellow, displayed around Wellington for months to come. For Checkpoint, Adriana Webber.
What a fantastic note with which to end the show this evening. Thank you for being with us on Checkpoint. We will be back tomorrow night at 5.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. The Prime Minister says the record number of work visa and residence applications is not displacing local workers in the job market. The Australian government is urgently seeking advice from the security company at the Nauru detention camp after reports of more than 2,000 incidents of violence were leaked. EQC plans to more than half its staff, saying work after the Canterbury quakes is entering its final phase. And 7-star Sonny Bill Williams is out of rugby for 9 months after rupturing his Achilles tendon, but will stay in Rio until the end of his team's Olympic campaign. Our next news and weather is at 7.
In this week's New Horizons, the theme is clever music, and we'll see whether Finnegan Shanahan's new album, The Two Halves, comes together to make a workable whole.